In a lot of ways, it's a love letter, to the Black community. And I think it is a way to talk about our humanity. It is a way to talk about the lives that we live, the people who love us, the families that we have, and how all of that is very conveniently forgotten when someone is brutalized by the police, when someone is murdered by the police, when someone becomes a headline. I think in American culture, we often have a way of making them very one-dimensional figures. And so I think that was one of the things that was so exciting about this project from the beginning, was saying, let's take two individuals who might end up as just a headline or might just end up in the backdrop of another movie, and let's build a movie around them. Let's be in their point of view. Let's travel with them. Let's feel what they're feeling and go through, I think, the roller coaster of what it is to be having a normal night out and then to be presented with unimaginable circumstances. Lena is one of my favorite writers. I think because of the authenticity and because of the intention that she brings to her work. She's here to say something. She's not going to waste her time. She's not going to waste the audience's time. She is really, she is a true artist in the sense of understanding not only the value of her work, but also the utility and what it can be for young Black kids to see versions of themselves reflected on the screen. This is not a movie that is anti-police. This is not a movie that is anti-government. This is a movie that is anti-racism, that is anti-police brutality, that is anti-racial profiling and discrimination. And that, I think, is one of the messages that's really important, to us in not only the construction of this movie, but, something that we hope audiences can take away from it.
I said to Melina one day before we were shooting, I called her and said, what are we going to do when the press, comes at you and asks you, why you made the film? And she said, I just want to stimulate a conversation. She said, we can't allow innocent Black people being killed to become normalized. I think the film is deeply powerful, and I've now seen it play multiple times with multiple different audiences, and I think there's an authenticity and a realness to it, and I think it shows. I think the filmmaking is beautiful. I think the acting is beautiful, and I think the story is as relevant as it could possibly be. I think Melina is has a singular vision that has been so exciting to be part of. I think it's honestly, introducing her voice to the filmmaking universe is an added benefit to being wildly proud of the movie and being happy it's this company's first movie. I think introducing and working with a talent like Melina has been an unexpected, joy coming out of this, and who she is so pure and so authentic through and through of her being, and I think that transcends to the movie.
Uncle Earl is a man who is haunted by his time in the service and other things. He's also very industrious, hardworking, a little sinister, and he's got a great sense of humor. Queen is my niece that has grown distant from me for very understandable reasons. We have disconnected, even though we were very close at one time. And it's a very hurtful thing for my character to know that she's out there, but that she don't want nothing to do with me. And it's a source of pain, but she's also a source of pride, almost like a father would feel, I think, I see her more as a daughter than as a niece. So she's like a superhero to me, and she's also, like I say, a source of shame. Slim is just some dude who wet behind the ears that's trying to keep up with my niece, you know what I'm saying? But my niece got long legs. I don't know if he can hold her stride. I almost feel sorry for Slim, you know what I mean? Because I know she's probably too much for him. But what I come to learn is that he's got heart, and that he's got a backbone, and he's a bright kid, And even though I don't want him to, he starts to rub off on me a little bit because he's such a genuine, good young brother that it's hard not to like him a little bit, you know. The reason why Uncle Earl risks everything for Queen and Slim, by proxy, is because he feels like this is a shot at redemption. And here's a man who lives with guilt from the time he wakes up to the time he goes to sleep. He's in a really bad place and has been for many years, not just because of the fact that he never really sought help for his PTSD, but also because of what happened with his family and the things he's responsible for and the pain that he's caused. I think this story is relatable, not just to us as Black Americans or Black people from the diaspora, period. I think it's relatable to all human beings, first of all. It's one of the things that I got from the page that really kind of resonated with me is that it's kind of a story, an allegorical tale, if you will, to an extent, about what happens when power goes unchecked, when power mixed with ego, mixed with fear, mixed with ignorance, mixed with ballistic weapons goes unchecked. We have these circumstances where young Black men and women are assassinated on the street.
I always see Slim as a kind of everyman, you know, like just content. Wants to find a woman that he loves till he's old, have a family, and be cool. He works at Costco's in Cleveland. $38 an hour. You know what I mean? He's living. You know what I'm saying? That's how I see him. He's just kind of like a straight shooter. You know what I'm saying? But that comes with a kind of, how I've interpreted it, he has kind of blind spots in terms of dating women. He kind of goes with the flow. You know what I mean? And that's what's fascinating about this script. You're giving this dilemma to a person and this woman to a person that doesn't buck the system. You know what I mean? That doesn't go against the grain. Queen's she's complicated, but like we all are, but is very much, I see her as a woman that's trying to run away from the trauma that she's been around and witnessed and is trying to right those wrongs through her profession. And she opens up to Slim, which is like quite a breakthrough moment. I'm like, going, this is what's happened to me. This is what's happened. This is what I've lived. And he doesn't judge her, you know? And that's, in that sense, I feel for me, that's a massive turning point for their dynamic, is because she realizes that it's a safe space for her, which is the, I think, foundation of a lot of great relationships. I feel like I understand why people would perceive them as heroic, but they have to have the right to be human at the same time as well, and complex and flawed. And that's what's great about this story, is that they make mistakes and they get back up. It felt radical. It felt radical, is what, for me. And it was like, oh, if I was working at a bank, I'd watch this, which is kind of like my litmus test for all kind of scripts that I read. It's like, do my friends that work in trains or that I've grown up with, would they be excited about it? Melina brings swag, man. She's just like, you just don't see filmmaking. Well, I think you're probably going to start seeing it now. You're going to start seeing filmmakers from a hip-hop perspective, but a female hip-hop perspective. Do you know what I'm saying? That have those sensibilities. It's kind of like fascinating. Like, and it's just a genuine honor to be a part of her first film.
Queen is a very complicated woman. She has that tough exterior, and what she's been through has kind of caused her to build a wall around herself wherein there is nobody. else with her. She doesn't let anyone in. She doesn't have close relationships with anybody. She's someone who likes to spend her time alone. And she's very exacting, obsessed with justice, definitely, and very hard on herself and others. I would describe Slim as, you know, he is a much gentler soul than Queen, in that, you know, he more so, I think, allows life to happen to him and kind of goes with the flow, you know? And so the gentleness that comes with a personality that goes with the flow, you know, he doesn't ruffle feathers. That's more Slim, and he's very earnest. You know, that's really his personality. He's got a very earnest personality and almost an innocence. There are two people who get thrust into this situation purely by accident. By accident and by instinct and by that fight or flight urge that happens when you are facing death. And I think it's very different than just saying, like, oh, these two people are heroes. You know, these are just two people that responded to a horrible circumstance in the best way that they knew how. And they chose what was important to them. And it is not necessarily heroic, but it was brave. A young man and a young woman go on a date that isn't particularly memorable, and on the way home, as he's taking her home, because they weren't going home together, let it be stated, on the way home, they get pulled over by the police, and as it so often does in America and in these situations, especially with Black people, as we are, Queen and Slim, the situation escalates. And unfortunately, it escalates into violence. And we end up killing the police officer. And instead of turning ourselves in, we decide to go on the run. It's been so incredible and super intense. I mean, as I said before, this is my first time starring in a feature, so you know, what that entailed was not something that I had ever encountered before, you know. And not only that, but it's not really something where it's more of like an ensemble cast. It's more, you know, really about Queen and Slim. So it's basically the two of us on almost every single page, which is pretty intense work-wise, because that means, like, you're in every day. So it's really been so incredible and so intense, and obviously it's so scary. It is about Black love, but it is also, I think, about Black resilience. And I think that it's more about that than, I feel like the love it's a given. You know, like that energy cannot be destroyed inside of Black people. And it's why I believe we continue to thrive and excel and exist even underneath all of the oppression that we have faced in the past and that we continue to face in the present. But this is their survival story and a story about their resilience in the face of something that is crushingly terrible, like killing a police officer. I mean, that is not, it's a horrible thing to do and a horrible situation to be in. And in spite of it, these two people find a humanity and a love in each other and in life.
It's really an experience. I mean, in terms of just like pure Blackness. There's no filter on it. There's no desire to explain anything or make people feel comfortable. It's just a movie that's from the gut, really. Black man, Black woman are on a first date. It's not going great. It's not going bad. But anyway, on the way home, the guy gives the woman a ride home, and they get pulled over by a police officer. Things get aggressive, and they escalate, and they ultimately kill the police officer in self-defense and get in the car and go. We never wasted time being like, are you sure? That's right. Like, to me, it's like, that is her gift, and that's what she does. And so for me, you know, I'm like, okay, I've done my part, you know, and wherever you need me to help out in this scenario, cool. But the truth is, I just always trust her instinct, always trust her gut, because I have to trust mine, you know, when I'm writing. And she trusts my gut, you know, from writing. Like, if she'll say, won't they say this? And I'm like, no, what if it's that? She's like, oh, yeah, that's great. But yeah, we just really trust each other. So showing up on set was always a pleasant surprise, because I never really knew what the shot was gonna be, how it was gonna look, what they were gonna do with it. But I really enjoyed getting to have a front row seat to that. Finding the characters was interesting because I didn't want them to be prototypes, but yet, in essence, they are prototypes, you know, for every Black man and every Black woman. Although we are not all a monolith, but I really kind of wanted to put pieces of us into these characters so that way we could see ourselves in them. To me, the templates were Malcolm X and Martin Luther King in terms of ideologies and ways of going through life, and in the most simplest terms. My biggest pet peeve is hearing characters' names in scripts. If you ask anyone that works with me knows that that's what I think I scratch out very often. Because again, it's about groundedness and reality. If you think about having a conversation with a person, how many times do you say their name in the conversation? So now I know why people do it. They do it because they want the audience to be aware of what the characters' names are, or if they forget the characters' names. But the truth is, the names are not important. It's really about who these characters are. And again, wanting for people to see themselves in the characters. In essence, anyone can be Queen. Anybody can be Slim. These are sort of like nicknames we give each other within the Black community. You know, whether it be a Black man saying, "What up, Queen?" or "What up, Slim?" I don't know, but they don't have a choice. I don't think we were ready for Boys in the Hood. I don't think we were ready for Do the Right Thing. I don't think we were ready for Set It Off. I don't think we were ready for, you know, Bonnie and Clyde when that came out. When that movie came out, you know, everything changed. You know, the way films were shot, the way films were presented, the way they were received. And I kind of hope that this kind of, you know, alters the path for cinema as well.
I've worked now with Melina for 7 years, maybe more. And, you know, it's been a while that we've been looking for a movie for Melina. And nothing was quite all of the things that she wanted her first movie to be. There are a lot of subjects and a lot of kinds of stories that Melina did not want to tell. She didn't want to tell a period story. She didn't want to tell a slave story. She didn't want to tell, you know, she didn't want to go over territory that feels like has been explored. She wanted to find something super contemporary. And Melina and Lena had worked together on Master of None. Melina directed the Thanksgiving episode that Lena Waithe won the Emmy for. So they loved each other in that process. They developed an incredible relationship. And when we'd heard that Lena wrote a feature, we were very excited about it. And Lena wanted to get it to Melina, and I can't remember what Melina was doing at the time, that she didn't have a lot of time to read, and I got to read it first, and I knew the moment I read the script that this was the movie. This is the movie we were looking for. So yeah, I mean, then we embarked on the process of starting to put it together and figure it out. Slim, played by Daniel Kaluuya, is, you know, he's a simple, straightforward individual who has, you know, strong values and love for his family, and, you know, doesn't have huge aspirations. You know, he's not someone searching for something outside of the world that he already lives in. You know, he wants a simple life. He wants to have a happy life with his family, and, you know, he's a man who's content, you know, also, which you realize is really admirable, and it's not, you know, it's almost enviable how he's happy. Queen, we meet her, and, you know, she is striving for something bigger. She is fighting the big fights. She's a lawyer, a defense attorney, and you know, on this day that they've met, one of her clients has just been convicted and sentenced to death. So she's grappling these things, and, you know, you can tell she carries a strong, unsettled energy, and she hasn't thought much about love, or, you know, that she's looking for that. She's her eyes on the horizon, looking for bigger things. This is meant to be a window into, you know, their journey through America becomes a bit of an exploration of the American landscape, both physical and metaphorical. You know, what it is to be Black in America today.
It was political, you know, it was protest art. Like, we were creating something that was a critique on the world that we live in and was gonna create a dialogue, and that was very relatable to the Black experience and also could show the Black experience in a very diverse way between these two people and all the characters they meet along the road. Queen and Slim are two very different kinds of Black people, right? They probably wouldn't have seen each other again had they not been forced together by the shared experience. And I think that comes across, you know, in the first scene. It's like, they won't have another date. Like, Queen is obviously, like, uses her education to get out of the hood and to move up in the world, and Slim is happy where he is, and he's happy with family, and his value is his sense of family and friends and home, and she doesn't have one, you know, and they really represent a Malcolm and a Martin and two different approaches to life. Lena was really like my salvation on the set. She was like an immense support system, firstly. She really trusts me and I trust her, so she allowed me creative space to do what I do, and I gave her the same space. I believe we challenge each other when we don't understand the choices made, and I think it elevates the narrative the entire way, you know? So she's artist support and emotional support, and she's really my sister. No one else could inhabit this very strong, powerful woman in the way that Jodie Turner-Smith could, you know? And then also to have somebody that could stand up against Daniel Kaluuya, who, you know, is our Paul Robeson or is our Denzel Washington. Like, he is really an extraordinary actor. And, you know, it's asking a lot of a new actress. And she stepped into those shoes and, you know, stood high and tall and supported him and empowered him in his performances, and he did the same, you know, and she became our queen. For Sturgill, I think it was important, you know, that he showcased that institution and did it in a very real place. Like, his father, I think, was a sheriff, and he grew up, I remember he said he grew up around a lot of officers like that, and he really wanted to bring light to the injustice within law enforcement. And I knew when we were shooting this that we had to go to Cleveland and we had to honor Tamir Rice and what he had gone through as we were honoring all these other Black men and women who had, you know, suffered and given their lives because of police brutality. I really feel like, you know, it's a testament to Black artists and their voices and empowering them, and it's really lovely to see that translate.
The script just was so authentic, was so real. Each character was specific, and the dialogue was just so rich. And I just was compelled from the moment I opened the script, like wanting to know these people, wanting to spend time with these people. I was a big fan of Lena. She was, you know, I watched all of Master of None. I had watched the first season of The Chi before we met, and I just think she's an extraordinary voice of her generation, of any generation, really. And I think, you know, Lena is, you know, really one of the great writers. Melina really believes in film and believes in telling stories on film. I think, you know, she can speak to it better, but it goes into the texture and the reality of the movie you're telling. You know, it's crisp. It's not always clean looking. It's textured. It has nuance to it. Film. You know, we all love film. We all started out on film, so no knock against digital. It's been great, but I do think there's a crispness to shooting on film that you sometimes lose.
I've thought of him a few different ways, but he definitely was a guy who was probably already having a bit of a bad day, obviously, and we don't know very much about him. He's married, has 2 children. You see that from a picture in the squad car, but it's a routine procedural stop. He saw a car swerve, didn't execute a turn signal, and it pulls him over. There's the 2 other characters. One of them is being very compliant, respectful, understands the gravity of the situation and the potential for it to become heavier. And Queen is a little more antagonistic, which sort of sets the button off. And then, I don't know, he's a human being that possesses some flaws that maybe all of us have the potential to have at a you know, one time or another, but for whatever reason, he just really takes his position of authority a little too seriously in this particular instance. My father worked in law enforcement, and so I was around a lot of state policemen as a child. I was familiar with the lifestyle and the mentality and some of the individuals that I was around as a child. You know, you see sides of things, and I probably watched, I'd say, at least 100, 120 hours of traffic stops on YouTube, almost habitually. You know, got to the point my wife would kind of go a little crazy at night. But, you know, just the situation on the paper when I read it resounded, and it felt very real and visceral. So I just thought it was important to try to bring those elements to the performance.